your favorite podcast platforms. You could find us on YouTube, and please remember to subscribe. And you can find us at realmeneatplants.com. My guest today is author Rachael Brown, author of the book For Fork's Sake. She is an expert on pain neutralization technique. She is a food coach and now an author. Rachael, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Glenn. Glad to be here.
So, did you grow up in a family where you were raised as a vegan from birth?
No, I did not. My mom was mostly vegetarian. Um,
Okay.
she she enjoyed fish, but she herself didn't eat meat except for pepperoni. She loved the seasoning, the spices of pepperoni. But for the most part, I ate mostly vegetarian. We would have meat one or two times a week, but lots of vegetables and fruit. She'd have fruit trees and a big garden always. So
All
I
right.
would say we ate on the healthy side of the standard
So, your mother
American
was a
diet.
pepperoniitarian.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Um, so you ate more or less healthy. So you got some you learned some value to put on health when you were
Yep.
eating.
Yeah,
But not anywhere near the diet you're eating now. So
exactly.
at what point did you embrace the idea of eating a whole food, vegan, low fat diet?
It wasn't until 14 years ago. I will say in my mid 20s, I was told I had high cholesterol and I should be on a statin. And I had watched my dad be on cholesterol medication his whole life, and he would have the thing where he would take I'm not going to throw any drug under the bus, but he would take a prescription and he would lose his taste. So he'd have to change prescriptions. And I just didn't want to go down that route. So I would ask my doctor, what should I do? And I would be told, cut back on the cheese, cut back on the eggs, and exercise more. And I hiked, I ran, I rock climbed, cycled. So that didn't really seem to make sense. I would up that a little bit, and I would reduce the cheese and eggs, but my numbers would slowly move down a little, but they would always creep back up. So that was in the back of my mind. But then 14 years ago, my nephew, who was 5 years old at the time, was diagnosed with cancer. And his mom was in nursing school, and she had a professor who asked her if she'd looked at the role of nutrition in cancer. And this is my sister in law who had a small hobby farm. She had taught me how to pull mozzarella cheese, like make our own mozzarella cheese the summer before. Um, we at the time had 13 chickens. My daughter had a little organic chicken, organic egg business. So yeah, it was a shock to me when she read the China study and watched Forks Over Knives and called me and said, "You have to look into this. We change our diet overnight." My nephew's now a healthy 19-year-old. I always forget to add, but so when I read
What
that
type
book,
of cancer was it that he overcame?
blood cancer, I believe. I
Mm,
need to ask again because I don't remember. He had surgery, he had lymph nodes removed, and they actually did Gerson therapy initially. That's a lot of juicing if
right.
people are unfamiliar, but all whole food plant based stuff, and then ate whole food plant based. So um,
Did they do the Gerson therapy in the United States or Mexico?
they actually did it themselves. She
Okay.
got the book, and she passed that on as well. And so
Okay.
she was juicing, 21 times a day, getting him
Right.
everything he needed. So, yeah. So, after learning that information, I asked my husband, you want to give this a try? And he was game. Our kids were 6 and 8 at the time. And so we got our blood work done and decided to really try this for 10 days. And I couldn't get back in for my second blood draw until day 17. And so when I went in to see my doctor, he said, "What did you do? Because I couldn't do this with medication. Your cholesterol's dropped 50 points." And
Hmm.
so that was both good and bad news at the time.
Why was
It
it
was,
bad news?
well, just bad news because I didn't know anybody other than my sister-in-law's family who was doing this. It was going to be a lot of work, it felt like. And, knowing what I know
So what you
now, that
thought was bad news was that, oh, you're going to have to stay on this more restrictive diet.
yes, like this is going to be
Right.
really hard.
Right. But as
Come to
we
find out,
know,
it's
it
not.
isn't really that hard, is it?
It's not at all. And that's mainly why I set out to write the book, because after we experienced all these benefits, I would try and tell people, here's the China study, read this book. And they would hand it back to me. You're like, too much of a read. So I set out to write a really simple, easy to read book. The audiobook is under 4 hours. The simple, just to understand the why for our health, why for the health of the planet, and then how do you go about doing this? How's the easiest way to get on board as fast as possible?
Right. And so you had, at the time that you made this change, a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old,
Yes.
and that was 14 years ago.
Yeah, they are 20 and 22, away
I
at
did that
college.
exact same math in my head.
Nice job, nice job.
And are they vegans?
They are whole food, plant-based, no oil. My daughter
Wow.
will eat, she has a little more processed food, vegan food, but my son, we learned throughout this process, when we initially made the change, our cholesterol dropped a lot, but it didn't go as low as it probably should have under normal circumstances, especially my son and I. And our doctor said, if you want to do the genetic testing, because my grandfather had Alzheimer's, died of pancreatic cancer. My uncle died of pancreatic cancer. My dad's in the early stages of Alzheimer's now. So he said, we could do this test, the APOE, the Alzheimer's gene test. So we did. And my father carries the gene. I carry the gene. My son carries the gene. So it was really important for us once we understood the whole concept of, genes loading the gun, lifestyle pulling the trigger.
Right.
We're really careful. It made it really important to follow this way of eating.
Right.
And I mean, we got used to it. That was 14 years ago. But yeah, my son will send me pictures of things he's cooked for dinner. My husband and I are like, wow, I wish we could have that tonight. So they jumped on board. Yep.
Oh, that's great. And uh, tell us about that transition period. How long did it take before you became comfortable with your new diet?
Well, I would say, partially what I wanted to impart to people in the book is that we made probably almost every mistake you can make. And so I want to help people not make the same mistakes. We went very black and white in the beginning. And it was like, okay, we know this works now. So this is what we're doing. And our house had nothing offensive to eat. I had like non-dairy chocolate chips, and sometimes my husband would have some of those, to snack on. But really, otherwise, it was all whole food, plant-based, no oil food. But in being that restrictive, and we said, when we go to friend's house or when we go out, you can eat what you want initially. And that led to things happening like my son eating, I can never remember, it was 6 hot dogs and 12 cookies, or 12 hot dogs and 6 cookies at a birthday party, because, it was finally the forbidden fruit. So, so we learned a lot, I would say, but, it didn't take as long as I thought, probably within a couple of years, even less, maybe in the first year. Slowly over time, if we were out or we were somewhere else, those foods that the kids had been looking forward to, like, oh, good, we can have pepperoni pizza or cheese pizza or macaroni and cheese, they would have it at their friend's house or at a birthday party, and they would say, doesn't taste as good as I remember. And they started loving the foods that we were eating at home. And, the science behind how our taste buds change around every 14 days, it really makes sense. When you're not giving your body those offending foods, those hyper palatable foods, your brain isn't setting off all those fireworks anymore. And all of a sudden, a red pepper tastes really sweet, or a peach tastes really sweet. So it's fun to watch the kids experience that for themselves and learn to self-regulate.
Right. That's why when people say, "Oh, I couldn't go vegan because of the taste. I love the taste of my steaks." I say to those people, what they are suffering from is a failure of the imagination, because they're not
Yeah,
understanding the construct that their tastes will change if they'll just give themselves 2 weeks to eat actually delicious food.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yeah,
And most people who love meat really love what's on the meat, or the
that's right.
seasonings and the plants that are put on the meat to make it taste good. So
That's why very few people eat just boiled steak.
yeah, exactly.
Um, so you made the switch and your cholesterol has stayed down ever since?
Yeah. Got nothing but lower. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been incredible. And not only that, but we actually when we found out that my son and I had this gene, we did carotid artery tests, and I had the veins. I was like early 30s, and I had the veins of a late 40-year-old. And the person doing the carotid artery test said, "Well, that's like a C plus, or C minus, for an American." And I was like, "What do you mean for an American? I don't be an average American." He said, "Well, the rest of the world, that would be a failing score." So within like 9 months from eating this way, we watched literally those carotid scores reverse. And my doctor said, "This is literally, you're watching heart disease reverse." So in little as 9 months, the plaque was disappearing because of
Well,
what
that's
we were eating.
fantastic.
Yeah. And we did a calcium heart score test a couple of years ago and had perfect scores. So
Mm.
um yeah, it's incredible. Our bodies are always wanting to repair themselves. It's what they try and do if we can stop hammering them with all the things that are making that hard or impossible.
So you're willing to test yourself. Clearly, you've done a number of tests. I'm always scared to test myself because I don't want to worry. I just feel,
Uh-huh.
oh, I'm in good health. I got nothing to worry about. Why do I want to do a test and find out I have a certain gene or whatever? Um, but at one point, um, when I had hernia surgery, I had to get a test of my heart uh, because of the anesthesia.
Right.
I had to be approved for that. So I had to go for a heart scan, and I didn't want to do it, but I wanted to have the hernia operation. So I called up a retired cardiologist friend of mine, and I almost killed him. I felt bad about this, but I think I almost killed the guy. Here's what happened. I said to him, "Doc, is there any way I could get out of doing this heart scan and still have the surgery? Because I don't want to do a heart scan." And he said to me, "Glenn, if you have heart disease, don't you want to know about it?" And I said, "Of course not." And he said, "Ah!" And I thought I killed him. But I had the heart scan and I'm fine. And then I had the surgery and that was good too.
All right, if you've ever wanted to show off your plant-based lifestyle and do it in style, here's your chance. We have some of the most amazing t-shirts, hats, accessories, coffee mugs, and more at shop.realmeneatplants.com. We have statement t-shirts that will bring a smile to everyone's face. I love the "I want tofu tonight" tee. Plus, we have podcast tees, Real Women Eat Plants gear, Real Kids Eat Plants, and Real People Eat Plants, just in case men, women, and kids didn't cover it all. Yeah, we love you and love that you want to show off that healthy lifestyle of yours. Again, check out our high-quality gear at shop.realmeneatplants.com and enjoy.
So if you had to do it again, I mean, I would assume that the way you eat now, that you're pretty protected from any kind of heart
Yeah.
disease, but do you still feel that way? Would you still not test for something?
Yeah, I still don't like to test. I have
Yeah.
a philosophy, which is I will do my annual blood work, keep track of my cholesterol, blood sugar, things like that. But I would never do, well, I'll give you another example. I, I got another hernia. It turns out that the whole food, low fat, plant-based diet will protect you from heart disease, diabetes, a degree of protection from cancer, not total, a degree of protection from autoimmune disease, not total, protect you from obesity, protect you from fatty liver disease. It will not protect you from sneezing your way into a hernia. It's no good for that at all, and
Good
nothing
to
else
know.
is. So I have two sides to my groin, and now I've got a hernia on each side. So when I got the second one, um, they needed to confirm that it was a hernia. And I said, well, what else could it be? So they did an ultrasound, and the ultrasound didn't confirm it because the ultrasounds don't always work to confirm a hernia. So my doctor actually said to me, okay, the next thing you have to do is a CT scan. And I said, are you kidding me? I'm going to do a CT scan for a hernia? You out of your mind? I'll come back for another ultrasound in a month. And I came back for another ultrasound in a month, and
Okay.
it confirmed the hernia. But isn't
One,
that insane to do a CT scan for? They know it's a hernia.
right.
You
Right.
know, hernias are tend to be reducible, which means they go, you know, you lie down, they go away, stand up, they come back.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a reducible lymph node swelling, you know.
Right.
So there was no other possibility that it was anything else. But
Yeah.
in the medical system, next step is a CT scan. And why don't I want to do that? Number one, the radiation. Number two, what else are they going to find? I don't want to know.
Right. Right.
Don't tell me
Yeah.
there's a dark spot somewhere. I don't want to know.
Right.
Leave me alone.
Uh,
And
I
that's,
Yeah, I will tell you actually on my calcium heart score, I
yeah.
had to go back the next year because they said there's actually a dark spot on your lung. And
And
so it
how
was
did
a
that make
year,
you feel to hear that?
I mean, slightly horrible. They were like,
Yeah.
it's probably nothing. It looks like an old scar, that kind of thing. But yes, I was relieved. And after the second, it hadn't, changed. And so they said, okay, at this point, you can keep coming back just to make sure. And I said, no, thanks. I don't want the
Yeah.
radiation. And I'll just go with it hasn't grown and it's going to stay that way.
Exactly. And if you didn't know about it, would have
Yeah.
been that much better.
Right.
So
Right.
that is my advice to folks out there. Think twice before you go for tests, because they always
And don't
find something.
sneeze. Yeah.
Yeah. And don't sneeze. Sneezing is a mistake. So how easy or difficult was it to get a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old to start to adjust their diets?
There were moments of, or pain points, I would say. My son especially didn't really like to eat anything green for quite a while. And so it was, tricky making smoothies. We did some smoothies that had blueberries, like brown for some reason was better than green. So it turns out you can make brown smoothies pretty easily. But, it came up with creative ways. Kids love games. So making it more of a game kind of thing at dinner, we would have soup and he didn't really like soup. And so it felt like forever. It was probably only a few months, but we would play the soup game, which
What's
was
the soup game? I never played that.
right. Okay. You can try this at home.
Okay.
So you close your eyes and you have somebody feed you a bite of soup and say, can you
Okay.
tell me what did you just eat? What was that vegetable?
Oh.
5 times out of 10, he didn't get it right, but it was a really enjoyable way to eat soup. So, I mean,
Okay.
silly things like that. I offer some suggestions. We would play high, low, and what the heck at the dinner table. So everybody got to tell during their day what was a high, what was a low, and what was a
Okay.
what the heck that happened.
Okay.
So, it turns out when you're sitting at a table, engaged in conversation, if you've been active during the day, maybe you don't love what's placed in front of you, but you're hungry and you're interested in the conversation and you're waiting for your turn to tell, then you'll actually eat. So, yeah, it wasn't as hard as I thought. And I found over the years that it's actually kids transition way easier than adults do. I mean, I suggest make a list of your favorite foods. And that's what we did with our kids. And at the time, it was things like enchiladas, pizza, burgers, lasagna. It was mostly standard American fare that they really loved. And so I just went about finding whole food, plant-based, no oil versions of these foods. And it would take a few tries sometimes to find a recipe that we loved, but getting them in on it, like, okay, we're going to try this new lasagna recipe. Is it a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or in the middle? And we just stuck with it until we found some favorites. And really quickly, these became their new favorite foods. So, kids also, when they learn about factory farming or about what they're actually eating on their plate, it's like their heartstrings are still attached to their head and they don't separate that as easily as adults do. And they don't have all those emotional ties to foods, like with holidays or that grandma fed them or whatever. So it doesn't seem to be as difficult to get them on board. So yeah, and I've witnessed this over 14 years now with lots of other kids as well.
Um, and so what about when the kids were invited to a pizza party or something like that? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, we quickly realized that like after my son went to that birthday party and had all the hot dogs and cookies, we couldn't control outside the house. And for a while before I learned that taking enzymes don't really do anything, I did a research paper on that for the Center for Nutrition Studies certificate. But like my son, I remember he was going to a birthday party and it was a pizza party. And I said, do you want to take an enzyme so your stomach doesn't hurt after you eat the pizza? Because, at this point we've been eating this way. So if they ate cheese or ice cream or something, then they would have a stomach ache. And he said, no, I don't want to take the enzyme because if I take the enzyme, I'll eat more than one piece of pizza. But if I don't take it, I'll just have one piece. And he was in third grade and he had more self-restraint than I did, I felt like at that point. So they just learned to self-regulate themselves over the time. And once you experience that stomach ache from, eating ice cream after you haven't had it for a long time, there's no better teacher than
Yeah.
yourself in that way. So thankfully, it didn't take a long time. And, occasionally they would have something, but overall they've maintained coming back to and sticking with a whole food, plant-based, no oil diet.
Right. Now, I'm sure your family takes B12 supplements, right? Do
We
you
do.
believe in any other supplements? Do you take anything
You
else?
know, Not until this year. I always went the T. Colin Campbell route and said, eat a lot of whole foods. You will get what you need from whole plant-based foods. However, we were very low on omega-3s, and we eat a lot of natural omega-3s in the source of walnuts and flax seeds and chia seeds and all these things. Apparently not enough. So that and vitamin D. I thought we live in California. We don't need to take vitamin D. That's ridiculous. Even though our levels were low, I thought, yeah, maybe this is outdated or, maybe this can't be right. But turns out only when you're in Southern California do you get that degree of sunlight that is enough. So we are now taking omega-3s, algae omega-3s, and vitamin D as well.
Okay. And have you monitored your vitamin D levels and now they're good?
No, we have not yet. It's been like
Mhm.
maybe month 5 that we've been taking them. So we'll be
Okay.
going back in
Well, they should be
shortly.
working by month 5.
Yeah, they should be. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, we do blood work. Maybe we're a little bit opposite of you. We actually do blood work more often. Our doctor, who is not whole food plant-based now, he is like, why do you want to do more blood work? You guys are healthy. But for us, making some of these smaller changes have really made a big impact. So yeah, we tend to test at least twice a
Yeah.
year to see what's
Well, I do
working.
too. I do too. I test 2 or 3 times a year
Okay.
with my blood work. It's the
Okay.
scans that I'm
Yeah,
nervous about. 'Cause then they find
sure.
things. I mean, if
Yeah, yeah,
in the blood work, it's true they could find something in the blood work, but generally that would be something I would want to know about if they find something. Whereas a dark spot, I don't want to
yeah,
know about it.
yeah.
Um, and what about exercise? What do you recommend as an exercise program to stay healthy for the
I
average
recommend,
person?
yeah, that you do whatever you enjoy doing. Movement of any kind for at least 30 minutes a day is what I would suggest to people. And that can be gardening, walking, dancing, whatever you enjoy, really. We do a lot of working out, but it's stuff we enjoy. So I don't like to lift weights. So we go to a local rock climbing gym, and it's functionally doing the same thing, but it's a lot more fun to be climbing with friends. We're right next to a state park, and I run trails. But that's enjoyable, a hike for fun. We do long distance cycling. We rode around the Olympic Peninsula 600 miles this fall, late summer. I think it was 6 days, and that
Wow.
entirely fueled by plants. And this was, there's not a lot of grocery stores and stuff. So sometimes it was convenience stores grabbing the only thing we could find, which was like the It fruit bars and some pistachios.
So you did
So
like a major 6-day bike trip.
yeah, yeah.
So
My
like
husband
camping
does.
out,
No, we were actually, this one was staying in hotels.
staying in
So,
hotels. Okay.
yep. So carrying, a bag on the back of our bike with a change of clothes and, yeah, having breakfast usually in the morning, grabbing something to have on the road while we're
Part
riding
of a
for
whole
lunch. And
kind
then,
of bike tour vacation thing.
no, we're members of Adventure Cycling, this
Okay.
organization that started the cycling routes around the U.S. And so you can just purchase maps from them. And so we weren't a part of any group. We have friends who live in Sequim, Washington. So we drove up and parked our van there and rode a loop. So we finished there in the end as well.
And was it the whole family or just you and your husband or what?
It was just my husband and I. The kids were already back at school. So yeah.
Okay. Well, that
But they
sounds
have
like
done,
a
we did as a family, part of RAGBRAI. I don't know if you're familiar with that, being in Indiana, the registered annual great bike ride across Iowa. It's been going
okay.
on for, I think, 30 some years. So every year there's a different route, but you ride from the western side of the state to the eastern side of the state, over 10,000 people every summer.
Okay.
So we did that as a family, at least 6 years ago. Um, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now you've also worked in pain management, pain neutralization technique. Is there any interface between that and diet? Do you find that when people go on the kind of diet we eat, their pain tends to be less of a problem?
Yes, most definitely. And in fact, I don't know if you know Kathleen Gage. She is a
Yes.
SAA member. She is the first person I talked to who I remember saying she'd been eating vegan, but it wasn't until she cut out oil that her knee pain went away.
Mhm.
And I find this often with people they think they're eating a clean vegan diet. They don't realize they're eating a lot of processed vegan stuff. And once they get rid of the processed foods, once they get rid of the excess oils, once they're eating real whole plant foods, then they deal with less inflammation. Their pain goes away, even if it still is arthritic, bone on bone kind of pain. So yeah, definitely, most definitely, eating this way, just in terms of what it helps your body deal with inflammation, in terms of that alone, people feel better. Not to mention all the side effects. Like usually, if you're eating this way, if you have any excess weight to shed, it comes off easily. And we
Right.
know that excess weight is hard on the body, but also hard on joints, so things like
Right.
knees, ankles, hips, if people are
Right.
having pain there.
Right. Um, and so would you describe your book as a kind of primer for people to learn about the plant-based diet if they don't know much about it?
Yes, I would say that this is the book to, if you're vaguely interested or know somebody who does this and you're like, yeah, I'm not really sure, this might be the book for you. Or if you eat this way and you have family members or friends who are like, what is that weird thing you're doing again? I wrote this book to be the easy to digest, pun intended, book on
Right.
the subject. So I really hope everyone reads all of your books. Everyone reads the China study. And these are seminal works that give so much rich information that is so helpful. But for people who aren't into the science or don't really care about the research, they just want to get at it and see how this works. This is the gateway drug book, I think, the entryway book. So
Yeah. Well, it's a very pleasant, easy read, and it's got good information about how a family can transition to this kind of diet. So the book is available on Amazon, and is available as a Kindle as well, as a
it is. Yep.
paperback.
There's an ebook. There's an audio book. You can get it at Barnes and Noble, anywhere you get
Okay.
books.
Okay.
Yeah,
And did you narrate the audiobook?
I did.
There you
Yes.
go. So you get the book narrated by the author. We'll put a link in the show notes to the book for Fork's sake. And any plans to write any other books, Rachel?
It's not off the table, but I'm still speaking at Veg Fest, at libraries,
Yeah.
at bookstores, doing all I can with this book. So
Okay.
yeah, maybe someday.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and we hope to see you soon.
Thanks so much, Glenn.